The King of Podcasts Radio Network proudly presents the Broadcasters Podcast, where we dive deep into the media industry headlines and dissect the digital disruption that diverges the masses into the new media counterculture and away from the media establishment. Here is the King of Podcasts.
Welcome to the Broadcasters Podcast. Thanks for listening in, catching the show wherever you find it, whether it's from broadcasterspodcast.com or you find the show on Amazon, Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever you find podcasts. And of course, you follow me wherever you find in social media at King of Podcasts. That's for Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, all of that. We're going to talk about TikTok itself because there's so much to continue to talk about, and it's an ongoing story. Now, we know that TikTok has been very influential for the music industry, but it's no longer just an influence. It's a disruptor now, officially. That's what 2022 has been for TikTok. It has really just shaken up the entire space. Now, the American music side of things, where they will still have their charts kind of controlled, we know that the algorithm changed as a result of what happened with this, and we know that we talked about Drake and Taylor Swift most recently about what there was going on with the music that was being done and how they were being charted. We know that radio has become, on the Billboard Hot 100 charts, a little more important. Now, that was a point that was like that, many years ago, of course. If radio was there playing and you had sales, yeah, you really could determine who would be most popular. And certain novelty songs and other things that would be trending somehow, some way, would find its way up the charts. And there would always be something that would also be influential. So say, 60s, 70s, you had American Bandstand, Soul Train, Midnight Special, and various other shows out there that would promote, and you would have appearances for all these different acts. And over in the UK, you had the same thing with Top of the Pops or Old Grey Whistle Test, all these other things, right? 80s, 90s, MTV. Very influential on what music is being played, especially when there was a change to how the formats were being done. Because, what happens is this. So, the music industry was still pretty much at a level 50s, 60s, 70s. From the start of the rock and roll era, 1955, all the way to current day, right until about 1980. And as we know, there were changes that were happening to stations where the programmers decided, consultants started coming into play and started recommending what stations should be doing to get the best possible audience. That progressive stations should no longer be the norm on FM. And to make these FM stations be prominent, you had to start, narrow casting the amount of songs you were playing and really playing to the most massive audience you could. So that would also take away some of the music that was going on, but at least you would still have a crossover. And the crossover would come from MTV. Because what you had was, you would have certain artists that would be played, but then things would just change along, right? And you would get into what music's going on, and MTV would be very influential. Now, they had music crossover from other areas, it's basically from the UK. But then rock acts were very much prominent, not anything from R&B or soul, because they were not into that. Not until the mid-'80s. Not until more of the late 80s, right? With the MTV raps and all. And then things would get a little bit, where the crossover would still be something there. And it was somewhere in the mid-'80s where rhythmic crossover became a format. And stations would kind of play that, because it used to be the top 40 stations that were just top 40, and they would play soul music. They would play R&B music. Some stations did. But there were some stations that did not. They wanted to be a rock-oriented top 40. And so there was very prominent stations that would not go and play like Michael Jackson or Lionel Richie or Stevie Wonder or Prince. They just did not do that. And those kind of changes happen, and then eventually you just had to find your way to say, okay, we'll eventually figure things out. And music did go through an evolution. All these new artists coming into play, brand new music, and MTV was the forefront of it. And of course, I always talk about Bob Pittman, who's now with iHeartRadio. And I think that guy was one of the instrumental people that was part of MTV in its heyday, which was wonderful. But, sometimes that's what happens. Some of these renegade, radio programmers, they start off with really good intentions until they get power and everything changes. Remember Randy Michaels? Randy Michaels was the head of J-Core Communications. And then he kept moving up all the way up until he was head of Tribune Broadcasting and ruined that company. Right? Randy Michaels was part of that rebellious stage from when stations like WFLZ, the Power Pig, was a top 40 station. Definitely were into crossover music. Like some of the top 40 stations would play freestyle music, which is a Latin bass dance music, and it crossed over. And then it really in like the late 80s, early 90s was when we really saw crossover, because some of the artists that were prominent on MTV or some of the legacy artists were not, as prominent as once before. You'd still have their songs, but then other songs started coming in and certain artists started coming in. All of a sudden, I was like, wow, what is this? Everything changed. It was just a big difference. And so that's what you had here. It was a real big, significant change that was fascinating for all. Well, Napster then came in to be the next disruptor. And we saw what they did. We saw what they were able to accomplish through this whole time. It was something amazing. And then we move along and we go into the 90s. We get into the 90s and like, okay, mid-90s, Napster. Game changer. The internet changes it all. Well, who would have thought that then, some 25 odd years later, we would have another disruptor? But I guess it kind of works in cycles like that. Quarter centuries. We're so far removed from the physical units now being sold, which was the important thing for the record labels to have, and also an indicator for Billboard. But now we don't have that so much. Well, there's only a few artists that will actually get that high up there to be able to do that. That's one thing. But now, not so much. And TikTok, to the detriment, has also created something where, yes, they've given a lot of opportunities to a lot of different artists that wouldn't get a chance to. But they've also brought in, because of that wide appeal, we get also artists that we don't need to have. And this year, do we need period? Do we need, do we need Young Gravy to come out all of a sudden become a star? I mean, do we need, Ice Spice coming across and playing her music? Do we need all that? Don't get me wrong. There are some artists that come across and they really do become popular. Like, okay, think about it. We're talking about Olivia Rodrigo plenty of times on this show. Gail, who's now up for a Grammy for one song. And all of a sudden, there she is, all of a sudden going and jumping across. Right? So all of a sudden we get this thing where we have so much going on when it comes to music, and I'm like, okay, sure, there's some new artists that come across and we start seeing them all of a sudden really stand out. Okay? For example, Steve Lacy coming out as a result, right? He was pretty big. Masked Wolf, Astronaut on the Ocean, he came out. Like, we've had artists that have come across and all of a sudden they become a big deal. And as legacy artists are able to get their music out there and also get noticed. And by the way, the newest thing right now, there's a global girl group, a K-pop group called XG. And right now, trending at the moment, this Japanese girl group has gone viral on TikTok because one of the girls in the group is a rapper. And there is a trilingual rap that she put out from the group's newly released video, XG Tape Number 2 Gals Zypher. And so a TikTok video was posted by XG_Stan on November 17th, shows a clip of Kokona's rap. She spits out fast bars in English, Japanese, and Korean. And so far, as of this, this was the story from Tuesday, over 7 million views. Over 1 million likes. And the YouTube video only has a little under 200 million views as far as I know. That's just crazy. Now, I haven't looked at what's happened lately, but I'm pretty sure people have found this song and they're catching up to it even more. Because it is incredible. Let me just turn this off. Hold on. I want to turn this off so I can actually play it. Hold on. Here we go. And so far, the song has That's not that many. 2.7 million views right now, and it's a week old. But it's good. She's got good bars. It's fast. It's got this drill kind of beat to it. It's really good. And so TikTok users are getting all into her performance. They're really enjoying it. And there's so many people that have been talking about it. XG is short for Extraordinary Girls, a septet girl group based in Korea, consisting entirely of Japanese members. But all of a sudden, there's another group that I wouldn't be surprised if the Gal Cypher becomes a song that gets to the Billboard charts because of where it's at right now. As we know that the music industry is still trying to manipulate through TikTok, have their industry plants out there, which is what Gail is, which is why I brought her up. The Grammys just had their nominations, and you know what? They're completely out of touch with what's going on TikTok. Because the legacy, right? The mainstream culture of music, they're going to keep doing the things their way they're going to do it. Because that's how they want to do things. They want to have everything going on like they normally do. The Grammys, they're going to continue to do what they're going to do. They don't care. And so they're going to go on and do their normal shtick like they always do every year. And then you look at the songs that are record for the year. Don't Shut Me Down by ABBA because their album came back out and they just really blew up. Easy on Me by Adele. Break My Soul, Beyonce, Mary J. Blige, Good Morning Gorgeous. You and Me on the Rock, Brandy Carlisle, Victory Lucius, Doja Cat Woman, Steve Lacy, Bad Habit, The Heart Part 5, Kendrick Lamar. About Damn Time, Lizzo, As It Was, Harry Styles. Very, middle of the road, mainstream. There's not a lot of artists that are there that are all of a sudden, they've come from the come up. Nothing from the ether crossover, not whatsoever. That's what happens. And so these things are happening now, and you get these changes that are all coming up, and wow, it's incredible. What a way to go through things and just see the difference. Where the music industry wants to be ignorant and stubborn to what the actual changes are going on, because while they're going to do what they're going to do with the music they have, right? I can tell you that for a fact that the charts right now for Spotify, they tell a different story than what Billboard says or what Grammys say, right? Weekly top songs right now. Unholy is still number one right now in their current chart, but you have Anti-Hero, Rich Flex, La Bachata Manuel Turizo, who's up there. I'm Good Blue, As It Was, Quevedo, Biz Rap, Music Sessions, Volume 52. That's been there for 19 weeks. Wow. Under the Influence of Chris Brown, Midnight Rain, Taylor Swift, Me Porto Bonito, Bad Bunny, and Chita Corleone. Global is still what's on top. Miss You, Oliver Tree, Robin Schultz, just outside of the top 10. And there's others, but it's wow. You look in here and you say, man, all these changes that are going on, you just got to keep your eye out on what's going on here, because the music that's coming out now, and saying to yourself, okay, what's going to come up? Spotify has their way of, tracking the organic part. Though can actually kind of go and track who's going to be out there in terms of artists that are going to be coming up from TikTok as a result. Because Amazon Music, when it comes to Spotify or Apple, they're all going to continue to track what the people want. Their stats are just based on what the people's reaction are. Billboard is an amalgamation based on an algorithm. And media base is completely controlled and rigged. It's the way it is. The pop stations need to start acting like pop music doesn't need to be just pop. It can be crossover. The tastes of the audience cannot be homogenized anymore. These are not the days for that. And plus, the pop music that's coming out is not that much. And the fact that some of these stations have to play so much gold music, they have to play music that's going on 6 months to a year old, doesn't help either. when you look at all these stations, yeah, they're playing some songs that might be new, but considering what they think is new, that's 3 to 6 months old. As we said before. They don't have anything set now. So let's go into a couple of stories and bring up where they're coming from. So Billboard had one story that came up about the younger audience. You know, radio's not getting them. We've talked about that before. But Gen Z is consumed on TikTok. Now, parent owner of TikTok, ByteDance, they have their Resso music streaming service. We talked about that. They want to move into new markets, and that's starting to become a thing. This is from a couple of weeks ago, but I wanted to bring this up anyway. That in September, the app claimed 1 billion monthly active users globally. And that was actually last September. That's right. They continue to draw the ire of the music industry for slow payouts to rights holders, even as labels, managers, and publishers increasingly rely on the platform to market singles and break artists. Now, ByteDance is talking to all the major music publishers, music holders, to launch this music streaming service in additional countries: Latin America, Southeast Asia, Australia, and New Zealand. And one of those deals is close to being finalized. And with TikTok going in all in on streaming, has already caught the attention of some of the biggest power players. To where Spotify's CEO Daniel Ek and UMG's chairman and CEO Lucian Grange have all expressed determination to get more for the company's uses music, right? So with the kind of momentum that TikTok has, Billboard's referring to the story about the money that all these musicians can make. All right. So a TikTok music streaming play could be welcomed by the music industry, provided it fell its predecessors by pushing per paying subscribers as opposed to an ad-supported model. And so they're going like everybody else, but like TikTok is now like the new player. And they're talking about the fact that TikTok has obviously been focused on scale for a very long time. And that one major label executive says that concerns them, that's the case. Now, there's also things where Sony Music's contract with Resso was expired in September, and Sony's catalog, which includes Beyonce, Adele, Harry Styles, Doja Cat, and Shakira, are no longer available on Resso, and they have to figure that out. They conclude the story by saying that if TikTok can get it right, the upside for the music business is potentially massive, and the appeal to Gen Z and its penetration in global territories where streaming saturation remains low. One major label executive says in the licensing conversations, quote, "We know the difference between hard and impossible. This is in the category of hard." People are keeping an eye on this. The other thing that's happening now with music on TikTok is we used to have a thing, back in the 90s and the early 2000s where some stations, when they would play music, they would speed it up. The octave would be sped up a little bit by 1, 2, 3%. And then now you hear songs that are on TikTok of people that are speeding up the songs in general. So Billboard has this story as well. This is from a couple weeks ago as well, but like I said, I held on to these stories because I'm going to bring them up on a week like Thanksgiving. What a good time to talk about it. Hard-charging reworks of popular singles are thriving on social media, on TikTok, and labels are leaning into the trend. So, for instance, there's Thundercats' Them Changes, steeped in funk history, and the drums that nod to the Isley Brothers' Footsteps in the Dark. A TikTok account called Easy Sounds posted a simple remix of the track, pushing the tempo until the song catches the jitters. And now this new version, as 114 beats per minute, is like a train threatening to jump the tracks, and TikTokers love it. And by the next Monday, streams for that song actually doubled. And this company called Ninja Tune, an independent label, they made a point and said that there was an official sped-up edition of Them Changes to streaming services and work with marketing companies to increase the new version's exposure on TikTok. The single would crack Billboard's Hot R&B Songs chart in October and first for Thundercat as a lead artist. And there have been new songs now recently that have started to do that. Cafoon's Tech It David Lovato's Cool for the Summer, Ellie Goulding's Lights, Sam Smith's I'm Not the Only One, and Nelly Furtado's Say It Right have all enjoyed streaming bumps thanks to the success of up-tempo reworks. So now, there are remixes that are going on. One person they talk about is Tristan Olsen, who's XX Tristan XO on TikTok, has amassed more than 3 million followers on the app of videos of him playing tempo-shifted edits, usually in a red-lit room with sporting dark sunglasses. So it's easy to survey TikTok or scan streaming charts and conclude songs which zip along at a breakneck pace are popular on the app. It's much harder to explain why. Part of TikTok's power also stems from the way it makes room for users to fiddle with the songs and upload their versions of popular sounds, changing the stakes of fan engagement. They go on to say this ethos doesn't only impact TikTok to their sped-up tracks. The platform is awash in sped-up versions, slowed-down versions, clap-track versions, and others that are super heavy on reverb, like turned all the way up to 11 kind of shit. That's the digital marketing company co-founder Johnny Claherty says. His company's called Songfluencer. And so there are a number of pages that do this kind of thing. And the music industry has not been comfortable with unauthorized remixes. But while there's been some resistance, you're starting to see the music industry starting to get a little bit more into this. And that's a big difference. And there's more they could talk about in there, but I'm going to just leave it at that. And it's the ongoing thing of like, where is music going? And what's left out there? These are a lot of things that are happening. And songs are changing. How about the fact that songs are also getting shorter? TikTok's also responsible for that. They're changing it all. Significant changes. And so at that point, they talk about how Lil Yachty had an 83-second track called Poland to SoundCloud. And Poland includes 2 keening hooks and some slack rhymes. A veteran publishing executive calls it an idea, almost a tweet, more than a song. Well, it reached number 40 on the Billboard Hot 100, and it was part of a larger trend, where popular songs have been shrinking steadily for years. Remember, Old Town Road's only 1 minute, 57 seconds. Number 1 song for 19 weeks on the Billboard Hot 100. On the top 50 tracks right now, you're seeing that songs from the 2000s went down 40 seconds from 4 minutes, 10 seconds to 3 minutes, 30 seconds. And the top 50 songs on Billboard's year-end Hot 100 chart were even less, a mere 3 minutes, 7 seconds on average. So some people also talk about that one theory holds a concise track is more likely to spur multiple listens. Right, because some of these people that are going to streaming services, they want to have the song so small, short, that it'll just continue to be re-looped and looped and looped and looped again. And that's the idea. Now, one more thing about TikTok here to bring up is that while songs are already getting shorter, TikTok is responsible for the acceleration of that. I take this from a journal of musicalthings.com. And they make the point and say that, Old Town Road, less than 2 minutes song, was over just as really you got into the song. So people would play it again and again. Streams went up, revenues rolled in, other artists noticed, and the trend for shorter songs took off. Now, they're just replicating the Billboard article, but I wanted to just bring that up, that particular point. I'm going to keep it short. One other story I want to bring up before we wrap things up, because it's Thanksgiving. I don't think everybody's going to be listening to an hour-long show and all I got to have to talk about. There's other things I want to bring up, but I will hold and table them for next week. About Amazon planning to invest $1 billion in movies for theaters to be released in theaters next year. There's an Outlook report on the future of technology media in 2023. We'll bring that up. And media layoffs that will spike amid recession fear. So a lot of different media companies are making layoffs. Inflation's here. And now companies are starting to make the cuts. So one other story comes from The Guardian about as streaming killed the one-hit wonder. It's a long story to put out there, but I'll just take some of it and just take some of the highlights for it, for all of you. In 2023 now, with streaming and social media numbers painting a detailed picture of an artist's fan base, are one-hit wonders waning? By being able to directly target fans who find an artist via one song, perhaps long-term careers in music are more viable than ever before. And so, for instance, Nathan Evans, a former postal worker and a Scottish artist, surfaced out of nowhere. In 2021, he had the song Weatherman, the sea shanty song, that went to number one on the UK official singles chart. And it helped him secure a record deal with Polydor and debut his album just this last week. So the potential change we already have now is that more artists are being able to have their moment in the sun, however fleeting. With now 100,000 tracks now being uploaded to streaming services each day, the barriers to entry are lower than ever before, and the viral nature of social media platforms like TikTok can propel tracks from new artists to streaming mainstream popularity by audience power alone. So there's various examples of that from TikTok. Pink Pantheress, Palfu, Mimi Webb, Cat Burns. Those are great examples. LF System, a Scottish production duo, they put out the song Afraid to Feel, 8 weeks at the top of the UK singles chart. The success was down to building up support for their previous music in clubs and radio, getting a kickstart, a domino effect for the track. And the team at Warner Brothers Records worked their arses off to service it to many spaces as possible. And they went with that. Then there was also DJ Ewan McVicker, who last year put out a track called Tell Me Something Good to clubs, and it started picking up heat, gaining the attraction of multiple record labels, including Ministry of Sound, who licensed the track. The song got up to number 15 on the singles chart, and things have just changed. And so there's a lot of examples like that are coming across. It's TikTok's effect on everyone right now. It's becoming more and more common. And that's what we're looking at. We're keeping an eye on it. Anyway, this is a Thanksgiving edition. We'll keep it short. You're getting a show in this week, and that's what I want to do for all of you. And I'll leave it there. So thanks for listening in, as you always do, catching the show. I really appreciate it. Come back next week for another Broadcasters podcast. And until then, remember that content is king, and the control of your content is in your hands.
Thank you for listening to the Broadcasters Podcast. Find all the links to subscribe to the show by going to broadcasterspodcast.com. And don't forget to check out the King of Podcasts wrestling program, the Wrestling is Real podcast, exclusively at wrestlingisreal.com.